Welcome. In this video, I will demonstrate how to create a simple modal pop-up using jQuery in ASP.NET MVC4. To begin, I will create a new project, as always, of type MVC4, and I will call this modal pop-up test 1. So just a standard ASP.NET MVC project, and we can make it a basic project. All we need is all the jQuery libraries that come by default with Visual Studio ASP.NET MVC4 project type. So once that's done, we're going to add some references to our layout page. Okay, so here we are. This is our project. So open up the layout file first. And our layout file is a standard layout. There's nothing fancy here. And let's just make sure that we've got all the jQuery libraries, which we do. So let's start by doing a couple of things. First, let's move this reference here to the jQuery library up here right after our CSS. And we also need a reference to the jQuery user interface library, which is the jQuery UI CSS, and that's in this folder here, in the themes folder right here. So let's move that right above the jQuery reference right here, just so that when our jQuery fires, it has all the styles available that it needs. And also, the next thing that we need is a jQuery user interface library reference. And we've got that here. I'm going to take the min version of it. And I'm just going to, if it cooperates, that is, I'm just going to drag and drop that right here. So now we've got a reference to the UI library. Oh, it looks like I didn't grab the minified version. So let's do that. There we go. It just loads a bit faster. So we've got that, and that's pretty much all we need to get this thing going. So let's start by adding some code here. So right here, first of all, let's add a controller here. I probably should have added this to give us a little bit of a jump start, but so we'll call this home controller, and we will add a view to it. Index is fine. And here I'm going to add a code block, a div really, and I will call the ID here dialog modal, and the title, we'll call it basic modal dialog. And here, let's add a paragraph here. This is a test modal pop-up. And that's really all the code I need. Now here, we do need another small script here in the header region, and there's actually a way to add a section here, which I can show later. But what we need here is a function that fires when the page loads. So all this says is grab this dialog modal tag, which is here. So all it does is it grabs this dialog modal HTML file if it exists, and it creates a pop-up there when the page essentially loads. So let's run this now. So here it is. There's our modal dialog that we just created. And it looks like it's working as it should. So a couple of things here though. Well, first I don't have any content here, so let me change that. I'm gonna just add some simple content here. Okay, there we go. So we have actual content here now. And there we are. So clearly this is now working. So let's see if we can change this a bit. Let's see if we can give it some effects, visual effects if you might. So to do that, I'm going to comment this out. And let's add another small code segment to this. So to do that, I have another small jQuery function here, which works pretty much the same way as the previous one, except now I've specified a width and height, both, and I've also added an effect on the pop-up load, which shakes the modal pop-up, and then it also, when you hit the X to hide it, it has an explosion effect. So let's see how that all works together. There we go. If you noticed here, let me refresh so you can see it again. Notice that the modal pop-up shakes now when it loads, and when I close it out, it just kind of explodes and blows up. So that's all nice and fine, but of course we don't want to have this thing load every time the page loads. We may want to hook it up to a button. So let's see how that works out. Well, the first thing that I'm going to need for sure is I want to make sure that the dialog doesn't open up automatically. So I'm just going to say auto open false. And now we also have to add a button. So let's do that together also. So let's go back here to the index. So right here, I'm going to add a button called opener, which says open dialog. And that's going to be the button that I click to open the modal pop-up. And the other thing that I'm going to have to add here is I'm going to have another function here which will be in charge of opening the dialog. So I'm going to add that right below the first one, like so. And all this says is this is a function for the click event of our dialog, which we called, I believe, dialog modal. That essentially opens up this dialog. So let's call this modal opener, since we called this tag modal opener. Basically, this is a button where when you click on it, the on-click event will cause the modal to come up. So, and here is where the click event is captured, and it's passed to the dialog modal function that we have up here, which then fires the pop-up. So if we run this now, we should get our result. So notice that now if I load the page, nothing is popping up. If I click on Open Dialog, there's our modal pop-up again. And if I X out of it, again, it closes it up. So of course you can add a width and height to this. Let's say a width of 300 and a height of 250 maybe, and it should technically do the same thing here. Yep, so now we've determined the size of the modal pop-up. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Please subscribe and leave comments or suggestions for any future videos, and I will be happy to include it in future parts. Thank you.